It's a good Thursday morning. Cold here. Springtime in Maryland is interesting. It's reminds me of springtime in Idaho, but hey, we are warm and sunny one day and cold and freezing the next day. Today's a cold and freezing day. I really want to come in here today and talk about insulin resistance. I do this every day, and some of you are new, some of you are not, and I try to bring a little bit of new information every day, but I try to remind everybody why insulin resistance is the root cause of most of our disease and disorder today, how we got there, how we can overcome it, and how so many people like myself are getting over it and getting their health back. Now, yesterday, and I love when you guys ask questions. Yesterday was on fire. You guys, questions, statements were crazy good, and I really appreciated it. So there were two people on yesterday, and I hope you're here today. Um, we'll drop some information. I was asked about fibroid myomas and idiopathic small fiber neuropathy. I have some answers on those in regards to insulin resistance, and so we'll go over that. But I also had somebody talking about stage 4 kidney disease. Now, I am not a doctor. I am not a nutritionist. I am not a specialist in all those things. I know that most of our diseases and disorders are linked to insulin resistance. So when you guys ask me questions that are beyond what I understand in today's life, then I'm going to have to go look it up. So understand that. And I don't feel too bad about it because I worked for a number of doctors. I'm going to tell you, your doctors are brilliant and they probably have a better understanding of most things than me, but they have to go look things up too. So let's dive in this morning. One thing I just realized that I forgot to do was pull up the information on the stages of kidney disease. So let me do that real quick while I'm talking here, and then we're going to get into everything. So what I'll talk about while I can is something that I normally do. Apparently, I can't talk and type this morning. I need to drink my tea. So okay. While that article is pulling up for me, um, insulin resistance. You guys, it's simple. Insulin resistance goes like this: is we're just eating too much too often and our foods are imperfect. So it's not just one thing, it's a multiple approach that we have going on. We have so many people telling us we need to eat every 2 hours, and yet science shows that people who think they're eating every 2 hours are actually eating up to 16 times a day. Our bodies weren't built for that. Our bodies just were not built to eat that often. We're not, that's not what our makeup is. So I talk a little bit about intermittent fasting. It's amazing. It works great. But if you're like me, you have a really hard time getting into intermittent fasting. It seems almost impossible. I'll give you some ways that I made it more easy for me towards the end of this. But understand that all of this eating too often and eating foods that have been changed, whether it's our raw organic foods, whether you're going down the produce aisle, hippity hop, thinking I'm doing the great thing for my body, understand that even those foods have been changed. The crops aren't rotated, the nutritional value of them is down. They've been modified to reduce the amount of fiber in them so that they're more delectable to you, which increases your blood glucose. So all of this is happening. It raises your blood glucose, and where insulin comes in is insulin is a hormone. It's actually a peptide hormone that is there to deliver that glucose to your cells as energy. So insulin, in effect, is trying to get the sugar out of the bloodstream. When insulin is doing that, it's not allowing you to break down fat because it's wanting to store it. It wants things to grow. So you can't break down fat, you can't burn fat when you're in a fed state. You need to get that insulin down so that you can then start burning fat. And that's the problem. Too much food, too often, modified, manufactured, now we're sick. And more doctors are speaking out on this. More and more doctors are talking about how our food is basically unrecognizable to our bodies because of the changes. So insulin resistance, though, can be happening in your body for years before it ever becomes diabetes. And I was refreshing some information from Dr. Bickman on how the body creates and utilizes fat. And remember, I always call fat our storage containers, our storage houses, our warehouses, those storage units that we put the extra energy in. So it's just like your house. You have all these Christmas decorations. and they're beautiful and they're wonderful, and you want them when it's the right time. I'm specifically thinking of a person's house that I went into. Um, uh, I was dating their son, and I went into the parents' house with him to do some stuff, and he was showing me. She had their whole garage was full of Christmas stuff. They had a storage unit full of Christmas stuff. They had an excess shed and storage places in their body. So it just brought to mind that. But so you have all these Christmas ornaments, right? And you want them out at the right time of year and in the right place. They're beautiful and they're wonderful and they're great. But what do we do with them the rest of the time? Well, we store them away and we don't see them. What's happening with insulin is when we have too much sugar and it's not out at the right time, causing our sparkling lights to go off at the right time, it needs to be stored away. So that glucose gets stored in our fat cells, and there they sit until we start to have. People think of it as a calorie deficit, and it's not really the calorie deficit. It's the ability to switch from burning fuel from sugar to burning fuel from fat. Fasting is not about calorie restriction. Fasting is about allowing your body to access the part that's burning fat for fuel. Now, if you eat the same amount of calories in an 8-hour window as you would have in a 12-hour window, the biggest benefit you're getting from this is not the calorie reduction, it's the fact that your body was allowed to switch and start burning fat for fuel before you started eating again. So understand that insulin resistance is far easier to address than most of us think, but at the same time, so much harder to address than most of us want to recognize. So we're going to go over all of that. But understand insulin resistance is way too much insulin in the body. Now, when insulin is high in our cells or in our bloodstream, again, it's blocking fat breakdown. It's encouraging fat storage, and it's doing all of this just as we move throughout the day. But with insulin resistance, one of the interesting things is most of the cells start to become resistant to insulin. Some of the cells become overactive. And we're going to talk about both of those things this morning in regards to the kidneys, in regards to fibroid myomas, and idiopathic small fiber neuropathy. So those things are all linked in one way, and that's insulin resistance. So maybe now I've talked long enough, and I'm going to go back to my papers because like I said, I am not the doctor here who's just telling, like, I've got to look stuff up. So to the person who is asking about idiopathic small fiber neuropathy, so that's a type of neuropathy that they're having a hard time like pinpointing why it's there, right? What we do know is that even with idiopathic small fiber neuropathy, idiopathic, what is it, SFN, um, the prevalence of insulin resistance is much higher in this group than in people without it. So, what the links are saying is that because of insulin resistance, it can make this neuropathy crop up, turn on the gene, or even make it worse. So, yes, absolutely, that pain that you're feeling from the idiopathic small fiber neuropathy can get better by addressing your insulin resistance and stopping the disarray of things going on in there. So, it's going to be things like, I gotta look through my notes, guys. Um, I thought I had this down, but there's just too much. Oh, yeah. It has to do with a bunch of things that are not gonna make sense to most people, like P13K or AKT signaling pathways, blah, blah, blah. So there's all this science, and I do have papers that link to that. But just know that this interruption of neurons, of neural pathways, happens, and it is very linked to this idiopathic type of small fiber neuropathy, wherein they've found that at least 50% of people with it have insulin resistance, and the people with the worst insulin resistance have the worst instances of it. So that's a pretty big link. Do they know exactly why yet? Nope. But they know that there is a correlation. And so it's worth diving into addressing your insulin resistance to try and get rid of that. Now, with the fibroid myomas, wow, you guys asked some good questions. Let's see. Let me get the paper up for that one because fibroid myomas or uterine fibroids. Um, we talked about how Insulin in another day, I talked about how insulin relates to PCOS and hormones and all of that. Well, it does play a part in these fibroids and the growth of smooth fiber muscle. And so that causes that excess growth, just like skin tags. I'm not going to say just like, let's say similar to what skin tags are happening. When we have skin tags, we have this excess cellular growth that come out of skin tags. Well, it's similar, we're going to say similar thing happening in the uterus where we're getting these fibroids from this excess growth of smooth tissue in the uterine. So that's driven by insulin resistance. And again, um, correlationally, there's more than 50% of people with those have been presenting with higher levels of insulin resistance. So, is insulin resistance, getting your insulin resistance under control, going to cure either one of those? I can't make that claim. Is getting your insulin resistance under control going to help you with the symptoms of and the progression of those things? Most likely it is because there's a high correlation found between insulin resistance and the prevalence or the worsening of those two symptoms or those two um, dysfunctions in the body. Okay, so I hope that gave a very brief answer for those things. I'm going to go back into, we're going to get into the kidneys because this is super important. Remember yesterday, if you guys were on yesterday, I talked about three organs that start to become affected by metabolism the soonest, and they're the biggest users per volume of this metabolic energy. And the number one on that list was kidneys, remember? And so it's kidneys, heart, and brain. Liver's going to be in there somewhere highly as well, but the top three are kidneys, heart, and brain. So we're going to talk about kidneys today. If you've ever been with me when I talk about blood pressure, there's some ways that insulin resistance is causing excess cellular growth. This can happen in the kidneys. So when we have this excess cellular growth, because we have excess insulin, and insulin is trying to deliver this energy. Remember, insulin is a hormone of growth. So when we get insulin resistance, some cells are just like, nope, I'm not having it. You're a danger to me. I don't want any more of you. And some cells are like, ooh, we like this party. Bring me more. So inside your kidneys, in certain pathways in your kidneys, in the areas where you're trying to excrete stuff, because kidneys are breaking down the blood volume and excreting the unnecessary and holding on to the necessary. But there's tissues in the kidneys that start to get thick when excess insulin is present, and now your kidneys are working harder and it's causing problems. So kidney stones, your calcium goes up as insulin goes up. And as calcium is exceedingly high, your insulin resistance tends to go up. But both of those things mean that in conjunction with these kidneys that just are not contracting like they should, now you have this calcium buildup in the kidneys because insulin is affecting the kidney's ability to contract, and it's building up calcium in your system. So now that built up calcium that can't contract sits in your kidneys, creates crystals or stones, and they're extremely painful to pass. That's just one thing. When we look at pregnant women and our kidneys, pregnant women, good morning, climb the mountain. Um, Man, I need, I don't know if if you're meaning that literally. My daughter's favorite thing to do is go on mountain hikes for her mental health. And I moved a few months ago. The place I was in, there were beautiful trails, and I could go out in the morning and walk. And up here, it's like windy and cold, and it's not very pleasant. Bottom line, I need to go out and hike more. I miss it, and it really like fills my soul. So I love seeing those things. All right. So pregnancy. When you're pregnant, you become a little bit insulin resistant. Think about it in this way. The body is trying to give as much energy to that placenta and that growing baby as possible, which means the mom is going to suffer a little bit at this time. So every mom becomes a little bit insulin resistant when she's pregnant because we're diverting energy to creating a baby. So mom's needs are not foremost at that point. The baby's needs are. But there are chemicals that are put out in the in the uterus that start causing havoc with our body and our kidneys. So one of them, it's made to increase vascular area to the pancreas so that the baby is getting the nutrients and the flow that it needs. But that can dysfunction with insulin resistance, meaning that growth is just not there. And it affects the kidneys because their vascular form changes, and now they're just not able to get rid of all of the stuff out of the blood that we should, and we start ending up with things like preeclampsia. The kidneys are pouring out urine, and so that there's one of the reasons they pay attention to urine in the women who are pregnant is that high amount means that we're having vascular problems in there, and it's going to be devastating for mom and baby. And so that is a kidney function, and it's linked to insulin resistance. When we look at things like gout, gout is because the kidneys are supposed to be pouring out uric acid. They get rid of the waste, right? You're urinated out. Your urine is probably the second most acidic fluid in your body. The other most acidic place in your body is going to be inside your stomach wall because that acid is supposed to be breaking down your food. But with insulin resistance and gout now and kidneys, what's happening is your kidneys are not able to dump off that uric acid. They're just not functioning properly. So you're holding on to more uric acid than you're supposed to. And that uric acid is staying in the body, settling in places like your hands, most often your feet and your big toe. And now you have this painful buildup of uric acid because your kidney function is down because your insulin resistance is high. Hope that makes sense. Too much pork. What I'm understanding, so there can be with any of these diseases, disorders, there can be numerous causes to it. So I just link the ones to insulin resistance. My understanding is that this too much sugar, and you guys, we're going to talk about salt in a second too, is what's really causing this insulin rise and the disorder of this uric acid not being able to be passed. The big toe thing. I can't feel one of mine. So the big toe thing with gout, if you had gout and it's in your big toe, then that's not gout. You would feel your big toe. It would be so painful. It would be hard to put shoes on or even stand or walk. The fact that you can't feel your big toe, I would be concerned. Number one, there's a lot of things there. So I can't deal with, did you have an injury? Did you have anything like that going on? What I can talk about is insulin resistance and the fact that it starts to cause vascular problems, that it starts to cause all kinds of other issues in the body, including neural pathways, nerve pathways being misfiring. And so you may, in those distal parts, start to feel a numbing, or you just can't feel those parts anymore. And that's a huge warning sign that you need to get your sugars under control. So, um, so lots of questions coming in. So that's great. So I would start addressing your insulin resistance and your blood sugars. And I'm not talking about your fasting blood sugars. I'm talking about your insulin resistance score. And I've given you guys a couple of different calculations, and I'll go over some of those later. But if you go to my tab, How to Tell, there's calculations in there that you can look at to tell if you're insulin resistant, because it's not about your blood sugars. It's not about your blood sugars. It's not about your blood sugars. It is, but it isn't. It's not going to show up as high blood sugars until you've been insulin resistant for a while and damage has been being caused. A lot of people, like myself, I didn't know that I was diabetic until all of a sudden I was. I was having all these issues, I was having all these symptoms, but nobody could figure it out. And then all of a sudden, one day, it felt like I was being diagnosed with diabetes, prediabetes, and then diabetes, and it progressed pretty rapidly, and it was devastating. So understand that you've got to pay attention to the symptoms and the clues your body is telling you. That's going to show up long before those numbers. Can this help vertigo? Yes, it can help vertigo through a number of ways. I haven't done the inner ear talk in a while, but it affects things like your cochlea. It affects the crystals in your ears. It affects a lot that goes on with vertigo and Meniere's disease. In fact, I had really bad vertigo 3 years ago, so much so that it was getting scary to drive because a cough, a sneeze could set it off. And I actually had an accident that totaled my car one day from one of these episodes of vertigo caused by a cough. Um, but my vertigo, I don't have vertigo like that anymore. Every once in a while, do I get a little like, well, yeah, not the vertigo I had though. So it's helped that tremendously. I have a friend in Canada who was diagnosed with Meniere's disease, got her to start the system, and now she's not having Meniere's symptoms at all. So yes, it can help with that. Um, yeah, if you have gout and your kidney function is not great, yeah, you need to take care of your insulin resistance and climb the mountain. It said it sounds like 90% of Americans are insulin resistant, not necessarily a diabetic either, but have other symptoms. So, and that's interesting because look, in 19, sorry, 2018, there was a study that came out that said 88% of us are metabolically unhealthy. Okay, close to your 90%, right? But the more interesting thing is about 4 years later in 2022, another study came out and it said that it had increased. Now we're at 93% of us are metabolically unhealthy. That was 2 years ago. Is that number likely higher now than it was in 2022? Probably, because our food industry, our food selection, and the way we eat continues to worsen. And until we address the big gaps in our nutrition that are causing us to be sick, we're not going to get better. And it does actually directly affect our metabolic health. Um, and I would never claim that this system reverses everything up there. That's not it at all. This will help your A1C and your blood glucose levels and your insulin resistance. I like to put the links together because here's the thing. For me, I started the system because I had diabetes and I had some weight to lose, or I couldn't get a surgery done that needed to happen. The surgeon was just like, nope, not going to do it if you don't lose 15 pounds. And I was devastated because I couldn't lose weight at that point. But I ended up losing 25 pounds before my pre surgical consult. And she admitted to me she thought she was going to be canceling and not even doing the surgery because she thought I would never lose the weight. So, as a result of me starting this for those two things, I started noticing things like my skin tags went away. The dark skin patches on my neck, I used to have dark rings around my neck and dark skin patches on the side of my face. Those went away. The dark patches on my elbows that were scaly and leathery, somebody called it the other day, those are gone. I don't have those dark, scaly patches on my elbows or my knees anymore. I don't have them in my groin. My legs weren't cramping every morning anymore. When I looked down one morning, in the summertime, and I had shorts on, I realized I could see my kneecaps for the first time in a long time. Inflammation was going down. Um, my IBS got better. My eyesight actually got better. These glasses are 1.75 diopter readers. Um, and I have a bag of glasses here that were 3.0 diopter readers 3 years ago. So at 60 years old, I reversed my eyesight to what it was at 45 instead of it worsening. Does that sound like it helps some things? Just by getting your blood sugars and your insulin under control? Absolutely. That's why I sit here and talk about it every day. Am I going to say my system reverses that? No. Am I going to say that getting insulin resistance under control can actually help move the needle on your health? And you can see a number of things, including kidneys, start to get better? Absolutely, I am, because there's a ton of science out there about that and how this actually is happening. So there's that. Let's go back to some of these other questions. Um, why I started to get better? Okay. No sugar, no flour, eliminated all colas and feel so much better. And those are all great things. Didn't say the H word. Oh, heal. Yeah, I can't say that. Meniere's. it's worth a try. So this is what I say, and that's a cash cow for those stinking pharma companies. So, you know what? It's interesting that some of the drugs that are supposed to be helping you with diabetes are actually killing kidney function too. And that's really interesting. You've got to be careful with those things. So, and Georgia, uh, I think that's great. Like, I applaud anybody who can do that. There's a lot of people, though, who just like stress. Let's say it like it is, and I haven't talked about this for a while. Stress fatigue, decision fatigue is real. We only have so much resources, and like I listened to Dave Goggins too, and he's just gotten really good at pushing that envelope, pushing past what is known. Most of us just are not there, right? So most of us need to do something in a way that's sustainable and easy to get us there. Most of us cannot start at day one in the trash bin and day two be like, I'm clean, I'm done, and everything has changed for life. If you're one of those people that can, like Dave Goggins obviously is, then great, that's good for you. But what I'm going to talk about is a system that helped me. So I did a tea in the morning and a pre-meal drink before anything I ate, and I'm going to explain why. That's what finally reversed my diabetes. Medications weren't working. I did the medical medium. I did all the crazy shakes and the celery drinks and all the stuff, right? I did all the stuff, desperate to get my health back. And in the end, it was as simple as this tea that I have every morning and a pre-meal drink before I eat anything that helps regulate my blood sugars. We're going to go over all that in a minute. And that's what got me better when all these drugs and all this doctor visits didn't help. Your doctor said that a lot of those cause kidney failure, etc. Yeah. Nephropathy. Can it reverse IgA nephropathy? Again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to make that claim at all. Um, I would be interested. I would love to have the time to take a look and see if there's links between insulin resistance and IgA nephropathy, which I'm going to be a little bit flippant and say there really hasn't been anything that I've looked up yet and wasn't able to find a link. And that's not my goal. You guys, um, I'm sure there's going to be something that I come up with that does not link, and I will tell you when I find that, right? I will tell you. I'll be like, here it is. I'm not a crazy person. This is not linked. But so far, almost everything that I've looked up or researched has been linked. And a lot of them, though, understand that this research on insulin resistance is fairly new. Fairly new. It's been around for a while, but people really haven't taken the dive in to look at it. So at this point in our scientific history, what we're seeing is that there are a lot of studies that say, hey, yeah, there's an increased instance of insulin resistance with this group of people. And this group of people tends to have it more than the people without this disorder. And so there's a link. That's kind of where we're at right now. As far as the deeper explanation on some of these things, it's just not there yet because science hasn't had the time to look at it. Do they know that there are links? And when we address the insulin resistance, people tend to get better from all of these issues? Yes. What I do say is if you do the system and for 90 days and you're starting to feel better and you've kind of cleared the junk out, right? You go into a hoarder's house, and our body is like a hoarder's house because we're literally hoarding energy right now. If we go clean that out, now we can see, are the floorboards okay? Are there cracks in the walls? Are the countertops peeling? But until you clear out all that mess, you can't see any of that. So my philosophy is this: address your insulin resistance, utilize the system to get all of that out of the way. Am I going to tell you that it's going to cure everything? Oh, no, I'm not. But I'm going to tell you that it's going to clear the path so that whatever's left over is now clear, that there are a smaller amount of issues for the doctor to have to diagnose through that you can then start to address. Is it my thyroid? My thyroid not functioning properly? I'm 60 years old in menopause. That means my hormones are completely different than they were 10 years ago. So is it a hormonal imbalance that I need to look at? And most often it comes down to your hormones. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I doing enough meditation and mindfulness to help my brain deal with all of this dysfunction that's going on? There are so many other things, but clear the room first. Clear the junk out so you can see what's wrong. That's what I'm talking about. I hope that makes sense. Um, and I keep swiping on this thing, and my battery's gonna die, of course. And I just realized I didn't bring my charger in. You've had hyperthyroidism, it's gone, no more meds for it. Um, Now, climb the mountain, are you on the system? I'm a little confused. Thank you for sharing the live too. Yeah, Steven's paparazzi. Let's talk about how you can tell if you're insulin resistant. Then, before my phone dies, I want to tell you what I did, and then we'll come back tomorrow and finish the conversation. I'm so sorry that I did not pull my charger in time for this live this morning. I don't know what was coming over me. Um, okay, you did have neuropathy. All right. So, okay, good, 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 good. So I would love to get your story, Climb the Mountain, 7 months. I would love to get your story sometime. Would you be willing to share it with me so I can help other people start to learn about the system and understand that it's not just me? So I'm probably gonna reach out to you. I'll send you a message here and let's talk. I'd love to get your story and maybe have you on one morning anyway. So the question before that was no more meds for it. There was a question. How do you know? Okay. So a couple of ways that you can know if you're insulin resistant. The top 5 ways that I talk about, but I'm going to make it 6, I think. I'm going to I'm going to add a bonus in. So the top 5 ways without blood work that you can tell that you're insulin resistant. Okay. If you have a high blood pressure, that means 130/80 or higher, then you're likely insulin resistant. Insulin resistance causes 95% of all high blood pressure, or is linked to all 95% of all high blood pressure. There are some that have nothing to do with insulin resistance, but the majority of it does. So high blood pressure is clue number one. The other two of the other clues are going to have to do with the skin. If you notice that you have skin tags anywhere under your arms, in your groin, around your neck, on your eyelids, that's an indication that you're insulin resistant because your body's overproducing keratinocytes from too much insulin in your body. The other one is this acanthosis nigricans, different from melasma, but melasma can tie in here as well. So acanthosis nigricans, those dark skin circles around your neck. I used to just think that it was because I was not getting sun here, but I was getting sun here, and it was actually a warning sign of insulin resistance. It can show up on your elbows. My elbows used to be black all the way around and down to about here, and this was all scaly. That was a sign of insulin resistance. Nobody knew. My doctors never told me. So, high blood pressure, skin tags, and dark skin patches, whether they're under your arms, in your groin, around your ankles, anywhere where fabric rubs or you have constant friction on the skin and you have that darkened patch, that's going to be insulin resistance. The other two of my top 5 for insulin resistance are going to be PCOS and erectile dysfunction. They're both metabolic infertility. PCOS having to do with how the body converts estrogens in the ovaries and affects your cycles and whether eggs are dissipating or not. And so I've done whole big talks on that. But PCOS is one. Erectile dysfunction has to do with um, Stevens, you're a female. Okay. So that's PCOS. Now, erectile dysfunction, again, your vascularity is going down, and so you're not getting enough blood flow to the area for that erection to happen. So erectile dysfunction is very highly linked to insulin resistance. I have a number of men who had low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, mood disorders, all of the stuff, man boobs. They started the system. Their testosterone got more normal. Their erections became more normal, and they started to have a normal life with their spouses again, while not having to go on testosterone therapy to help it all, but just by addressing the amount of insulin in their system. And I've gone over talks. I won't have time to go over that full talk today, but if anybody wants, I can do that later this week. Those are the top 5 ways: blood pressure, skin tags, acanthosis nigricans, PCOS, or erectile dysfunction. You got any one of those? I'm going to say that the biggest chance is that you're insulin resistant. Now, there's a few other ways you can tell, and one of them is going to include labs that you may have had on an annual basis. But the sixth way that I want to toss in to tell if you're insulin resistant is your belly poking out. Man or woman, you're a woman, but thin or heavy, does your belly just jut out? Like you have this pregnant belly kind of, and it's just poking out the front. That's insulin resistance. So you have two types of fat on your body, subcutaneous and visceral, adipose tissue, fat. So the subcutaneous fat is distributed more across the body, right? The visceral fat is stored in and under the muscle wall in the belly region of the body. Now, interesting to me, besides the cues from the hypothalamus to create more of this brown fat, the mitochondrial function fat, it has to do with the liver. And so higher fruit juice and fructose, including high fructose corn syrup, horrible stuff, and alcohol have your body converting that into fat through the liver more than any place else. So the liver's primary job, fructose and alcohol are primarily processed through the liver. Now, in the liver, when it's starting to get fat, it's going to start to create more of this adipose tissue, this visceral fat in the belly. So it's not only has to do with the hypothalamus, it has to do with the load that the liver is delivering, why you start to get that big belly, but it all comes from that insulin resistance. Yeah, and in your belly, and you can't lose it. That's insulin resistance. That's the sixth way. If you're having that now, I shouldn't say that because there's always going to be some outlier thing, right? If your belly is just all of a sudden protruding and it's painful, and maybe you have gastritis, maybe you have other things going on, but overwhelmingly, the biggest cause for that belly to jut out like that and that you can't lose it, is insulin resistance. So those are the top six ways. Now, a couple of the other ways. If you're having migraine headaches, brain fog, anxiety all the time, now we're going to start to bulk stuff in, right? If you have any one of those symptoms and you start adding these in. So if you look up here and you have more than 2 or 3 of those, just consider that you're insulin resistant. And isn't it crazy that it doesn't take a pill to fix it? It does not take a medication to fix it. You don't have to get a prescription to fix it. Okay? Medication is not going to fix the problem that caused it in the first place. It's going to band-aid it, but it's not going to fix it. And what we want to do is fix it. So we're going to go over that next. But so those headaches, the brain fog, if you get cold or fatigued after you eat, that's a blood glucose dysregulation, probably insulin resistant. Yeah, so isn't that correct? Okay, so Stevens, if my phone dies, I'm so sorry. Please catch back up to me tomorrow. I'm going to go as long as my phone will live. But so that happened to me too, because what they're looking for is your blood sugars and your A1C. And gosh, I got so much information. I did not have high blood sugars, high lipids, any of that until I did. And then when we look at it and we look at all the symptoms, we understand I had high blood pressure for years. I had weight that wouldn't come off. My belly was protruding. I was losing my eyesight. I was losing my teeth and gums were bleeding consistently, and they wouldn't stop. My ears were ringing so bad I couldn't hear anything. I had muscle cramps. I had the skin tags. I had, you compile a list of, if you look up a list of everything that's linked to insulin resistance, I had probably 90% of it. It was crazy. And doctors were throwing up their hands to figure it out. And this one system started changing all of that. Yeah, eating healthier, regular exercise, even walking is good, but it may not be enough, because I've dealt with people who are pescatarian, who get regular exercise, who buy all their stuff from the farmer's market, and they're still having some problems. Maybe not as bad as other people, so that all that did them good, but there's still gaps. And what we're going to talk about is closing those gaps in our nutrition. 4 days into carnivore diet, hoping to reverse it. So I hope you can reverse it too. Now, how I reversed it, guys, and what we're going to talk about next, and then I want to drop something that we just learned last night. So how I reversed it is this. I did this tea that I drink every morning. It gives me energy, mental clarity. It's giving me a ton of vitamins and minerals. It has antioxidant, anti-cancer properties in it, anti-inflammatory properties. It's heart healthy, helping my heart regulate. So even healthy. Oh, so eating not eating better, even healthy eating. I'm confused. No, I am an advocate for eating as healthy as you can, right? I'm an advocate for that. I'm also very aware that not everybody has the means and resources to do, whether it's knowledge wise, whether it's emotionally wise, whether it's situationally wise. Not everyone has the means to make that deep dive into carnivore or any other like um, off the beaten path kind of eating. Now, I typically eat more carnivoristic, although I still have some grains and some sugars once in a while, but my body thrives on protein. So the tea, you if you go to my profile link, there's my webpage there, and there's also a place to get a hold of me, and then we can talk about it. The tea is a very highly concentrated form of yerba mate from Argentina. This tea you cannot get anywhere else. It's patented. It's 375 times stronger than any bagged yerba mate tea, but it's also been put through a process that makes sure that it's what they call hyper pure. So PAHs, pesticides, all of that are stripped out. So now you're getting something that's 375 times more potent. You can just mix in water, hot or cold, and it's going to give you all these great benefits. In fact, the Argentinian soccer team flies in tons of this stuff when they're competing at World Cups or whatever, so that they have their tea to drink. Because it also, I just did a video, it also improves physical performance by 10 to 15%, will not pop an athlete on a drug test because it's food. This is not something that any athlete has to be afraid of, the system at all. And because I lifted in a drug tested federation, and I was so careful about everything I put in my body because I did not want to get popped on a drug test, even if it was something that I didn't know I took in, and lose my titles and my medals. So I just didn't want to risk that. So fasting or not eating is better. Fasting is important. Now, so I do the tea in the morning, how I did it, and I will continue to do it this way for the rest of my life. And then I have a pre-meal drink, 2 pre-meal drinks. So I eat generally 2 meals in a day. I have one before each of my meals. This reduces a blood sugar spike by up to 20% when I drink it before my meals. And it's as easy as I can stop and get a bottle of water like this, and I drink it down to about there, mix this in, or I can put it in a bottle like this, shake it up, and drink it down. Here, why don't I show you? Because it's about time anyway. I like to get in extra fiber. Sometimes I do it even when I'm not eating, just because I like to have that good action in my gut for the microbiome. So this is the packet. Oops, easy tear is this side. So a little bit of water in here. I'm going to tear this open. That easy. Pour it in. And the tea works just like this too. You just mix it up. No steeping, no any of that. So I'm just going to shake it a couple of times. That's my pre-meal drink. It tastes like an orange creamsicle. Now, what I want you to notice is what that we can get the nutritional value out of it and hold on to the sugar long enough that it's not hitting your bloodstream and spiking it quickly. Um, do you have to be close to a restroom? No, you don't. When you first start, your gut's going to have to get used to this, and so you may have some cramping, bloating. That's not a bad sign. That's a sign that your body is getting healthier. This gives me 5 grams of very specified fiber. So just 2 of those packets in a day ups my fiber intake from 10 to 15 grams to about 25 grams. I sometimes add a third one in just to get me to that 30 grams of fiber that we should have in a day. And that's it. Close to a restroom. Would it be interesting, Georgia, to know that now that I've been on the system for a while, the only times I have to be close to a restroom is if I've ingested seed oils or sugar. Those two things I've noticed are the biggest inflammation makers in my body. If I go out and I eat something that's cooked in a seed oil, I have trouble. Last night I made chicken strips or chicken fingers. I made a ranch coated one, and I made a honey bourbon coated one, just flavored. But I cooked them in olive oil. No problems. Those were some of the best chicken strips I've ever had. No problems. There was no seed oils. There was no contaminants. There was none of that. But now, if I went out someplace and had those chicken strips, chicken fingers, whatever, I would likely be having problems because my body is cleared itself out of most of the waste. And when I get those things in, it's devastating. Can I pause for a second and say that seed oils, when I talk about how toxic they are, I learned recently, like gluten. Let's start with gluten. Do you know that if you have a gluten sensitivity and you have even one bite of gluten, that can hang around irritating you for up to 6 weeks? I thought that was bad. Seed oils, the linoleic acid from seed oils that's causing inflammation, not only causing you to have to go to the bathroom really quickly, not only causing you to have gastrointestinal distress, but causing inflammation throughout your body, that can be in your system for 600 days after one serving of those seed oils. 600 days of inflammation. Now, with that knowledge, I'm starting to be like, oh, yeah, maybe I don't want to take a chance on stopping by Chick-fil-A or Popeyes or any of those places I used to go to, because I notice right away that I get sick. My grandson even knows we can't go to Chick-fil-A. It's going to make Nana's tummy bad. But I don't have to be next to a restroom urgently. I don't have those kind of devastating things. Now, will I feel the need to use the restroom within about an hour of eating? Yeah. And guess what? That's kind of healthy. That's kind of healthy. If you're eating 3 times a day and you're not pooping 3 times a day, we have a problem. Okay, that's not healthy. That's causing inflammation and toxicity in your body. And so we want things to keep moving along at a rate that's healthy for our body. Okay. So, a tea in the morning, a pre-meal drink before I eat anything, and that's it. What we've done now is we've noticed that a lot of people, especially because there's a lot of people my age who are doing it and they do OMAD. And I want to say this, you guys, OMAD is not better than a 16-8 fast. OMAD is not better than a 16-8 fast. OMAD is not better than a 16-8 fast because you're getting one meal and you're not able to get all the nutrients in that you need when you're doing consistent OMAD. Now, if you do a 24-hour or a 36-hour fast once a week, once a month, that's beneficial because it's allowing your body to do a number of things. But you're still able to rebound and get the nutrition in that you need in regular eating windows. But when you're eating one meal a day and you're trying to make it smaller because you're in this whole calorie restrictive kind of mindset, you're going to cause problems to your body. Okay. 16-8 fast, 16 hours of fasting. I'll go over why later. And then eat in an 8-hour window. And most of the people, it's a 6-hour window. So they're actually getting a 20-hour fast in. Great. Like you can get in 50 grams of protein in a meal. I do it regularly. I try to get upwards of that sometimes. And if I can't, then I just add a protein shake in somewhere in that 8-hour window to get my protein levels up and space it out. But it's actually easier than you think. Do I advocate for high levels of protein? I do. Do I advocate for higher levels of healthy fats like avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, butter, ghee, and the animal fats? Yes, I do. Am I totally against seed oils and vegetable oils? Yep, I am. They're basically toxic waste, and I will get into that. I've gone into that multiple times, and it just is causing inflammation in your body. Understand that. Just understand that. If you're like me, and you've done enough work on getting rid of most of the toxins, and you start to have a body that's like not used to having all those, and you're not running around trying to find all these phantom disorders while you're having these aches and pains, and you can now ingest those seed oils and go, ooh, my body hurts right away. I have brain fog right away. I have gastrointestinal distress right away. Then you'll understand what a poison and a toxin they are. Stay away from them. Okay, so my protein shake choice, there is one from Unicity that I use, although I was listening to Dr. Bickman this morning, and I've been aware that he has his own protein shake for a while. I have not tried it. I would love to try Dr. Bickman's protein shake if he still has it available. But what I use currently is the Unicity protein shake called Complete. It's real. the texture of it is very fine. It mixes really easily. It's not clumpy, it's not chalky, it's not any of that. The protein seems to be digesting well through it. It only comes in vanilla right now, and so which is great for me because sometimes I add in orange. Maybe I make an orange creamsicle type of shake out of it by adding in some orange flavoring or whatever. I've had chocolate mint with it. I've had peanut butter chocolate by just adding in flavors that I want. But the Unicity's complete protein is what I use, Mandy. So it is about 10 grams of protein per scoop. So if I'm just relying on a protein shake to get in that for the meal, which I've done, then I'm putting in about 4 scoops of the protein in that shake. I don't do the shakes every day. I use them as a filler when I need them, just to be honest. So yesterday I made those chicken fingers from some organic chicken breast, and we had them for dinner. But they were honestly they were so yummy. I ended up having a snack last night, but I didn't feel bad about it because it was chicken fingers and it was primarily protein, and I understand that that's not really spiking my insulin as much as sugar would. Now, does it mean I still took in food and had insulin and had a different? I think I had the last ones at like 7 p.m. last night. So I'm now 14 and a half hours into my fast. Okay. But protein shake, that's what I use is the Unimate, the Unicity Complete. Now I've done a lot of different shakes, especially when I was competing, and I learned to read the labels. Some shakes are going to claim to have high levels of protein, but they're really not digestible. Some shakes don't have a really good vitamin and mineral profile to them. And I prefer to have a shake that has a decent vitamin mineral profile and is a digestible type of protein. And I find Unicity's Complete to be that. I've spent more than, like, I've been to GNC and spent $70-$80 on a tub of protein when I was competing to make sure that it was clean and that it was giving me everything I needed. I find that Complete does everything like that for me. Yes, Dr. Bickman. Okay, if you guys don't know, and you want more information, Dr. Bickman has a podcast on YouTube called Insulin IQ. Go watch him. Most of the information I get comes from him or doctors like Hyman and Pradeep and Yao and Fung. But yeah, Dr. Bickman has a podcast. Plus, he's been on many, many other podcasts, including Drew Pruhowitz's podcast and Tom Bilyeu's podcast, and a number of others. You can go into YouTube and just type in Ben Bickman, and you're going to find a ton of information from this man. He loves nothing more than to share this life-saving information with people. And as far as I know, most of those podcasts he doesn't get paid for. He just does it because he's sharing information. So, yeah. Okay, so a tea in the morning. And by the way, Unicity just did an interview with Bickman, and if you guys want, I can do a video and link that video to it. But he did a video on the benefits of Unimate, the GLP-1 actions, and his opinion of Unimate and how it's a better alternative to GLP-1 drugs than those GLP-1 drugs because it's not causing damage in the body. It's actually addressing the root cause and giving you a number of vitamins and minerals. So Dr. Ben has been recommending this for a long time. He also had a hand in developing this because of his background in metabolic science. What we're doing now is, and I want to get this out, a couple of things about the product. The way the system looks now, I started to talk about it and we got off track, is it's two teas in a day and 1 balance. Like I said, I will always do 2 balance just because I love the effects of the fiber. But for everybody else who is actually having extra balance left over, we're doing 2 teas a day and 1 balance because that's what it seemed like people were doing. Now that we understand more about the tea, the GLP-1 action, and its ability to help fight metabolic disorders and overeating, we're utilizing that twice a day. So 1 in the morning, and this is what I've been doing all along anyway. So for me, it's not really a big change. I drink a tea in the morning, and I generally have another tea that I sip on throughout the day, but primarily in the afternoon when you start to have that midday slump where you're just like, I got to get through the rest of the day. The tea, if I have it in the afternoon, doesn't keep me awake at night. How you're using the fiber now is they say to have your lunch meal and have this with dinner. Why they say to have this with dinner is because most of us have the bulk of our carbohydrates at dinner, and so they're trying to protect you from that. Um, in the research that I've done for myself, if I was going to do one a day, I would probably have it at my lunch meal and make sure that most of my carbohydrates were at that lunch meal, so that in my dinner meal I'm focused on proteins and fats. So I'm not going to bed with high insulin levels, and the fiber is active in your system, according to multiple studies, for about 5 hours after you've ingested it. So if I have one at noon or 1 for my first meal, and then I don't have one, but I have my dinner at 5 or 6, that fiber is still active. That's how I would do it. Certain fiber irritates your bladder. There is, if you Stevens paparazzi. So if you go to my link tree, there is a link to my website in there, and I don't have the new nutritional panels with stevia on it in there, but I will get those in this week. But the nutritional panels are in there, and the fibers are listed. Um, so berberine is in there. There's a couple of other. There's 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers, but they're actually listed on the nutritional panel, so you can go check it out and know what exactly is in this. So that's that, you guys. That's all it is a tea in the morning and a pre-meal drink. Now, when we talk about how this helps so many things, one of the new things that they just did, and this is why I love Unicity, we know that we're going to be facing big pharma soon because we're making such a wave in the industry, and so many pharmacists, oncologists, neurologists, cardiologists are all talking about this and how they're using it. So one of the things we want to do is we have a guarantee. It started out with a 90-day blood work guarantee. So if you test your A1C before you start the system and you test it again after 90 days and your A1C hasn't gone down, they give you your money back. Okay. But they've taken this so seriously now that they've been working for a while to find a lab. We now actually have a lab that will run your A1C. You don't have to go to the doctor and have a blood work done. You don't have to go have your arm poked. You don't have to do any of that. But we have an A1C kit. You get 2 tests, one that you start when you start the system and one that you take 90 days later, and you send them in, and they give you your results. So you can see those results without having to go pay for the doctor's visit, go have a blood draw and all of that. You're still going to poke your finger to get some blood on these kits, but it's about $45 for the test kit. If you're interested, if you're really serious about where's my A1C now and what's it look like after 90 days, get the test kit. Let me know and I'll get you that link. So this help with high cholesterol, yes. So I'm going to be really honest, okay? I try to always be honest. I have had a problem with sugar lately. And so I have another system that I'm using that scans me daily without a finger poke. But my cholesterol panel is all in range. Now, my insulin levels were a little bit high because I've been eating way too much sugar, which is going to elicit insulin. So that's a clue that Misha needs to get her literal stuff together. But this other technology that I have now, I'm going to be starting to integrate it into what I do. And if you're interested, I can talk about that on another one as I'm learning more about it. But it's a system I scan myself with every day to check my levels. But yes, this will help with your cholesterol levels. Absolutely. Um, it will. So especially, so one of the ways you can tell, my phone is going to die anytime I know. But one of the ways you can tell you're insulin resistant is a simple test. Okay. So when you look at your blood work, your lab work, annual lab work, you should have a cholesterol panel, right? It is hard. It is hard. So if you look at that cholesterol panel and you write down your number for your triglycerides and then write down your number for your HDL, the good cholesterol, right? So what you want to do is divide your triglycerides by your HDL, and the resulting number should be 1.5 or less. So even if you have a great A1C number, even if you have a great blood glucose number, and you want to do this to see, hey, am I likely insulin resistant and am I at risk for cardiovascular disease? You can do this calculation. It's posted on the NIH's website. Dr. Bickman talks about it in his book, but that number is triglycerides divided by HDL should be below 1.5. If it's 2.0 or higher, you're probably building into some insulin resistance. If it's 3.0 or higher, you've probably already been diagnosed as diabetic and you need to get it under control. That calculation is in my How to Tell tab on TikTok. There's another calculation that involves your blood glucose divided by your insulin, or multiplied by your insulin and then divided by a keystone number that will give you your insulin resistance score. That video is also in the How to Tell tab, but it would require you getting the insulin resistant or the homeostatic method of something, insulin resistant test. So HOMA, HOMAIR. You'd have to have that added to your blood work, and it costs about $30, and then go use that calculation to see what those numbers actually mean for your body. So the system is all I did, you guys, to reverse all of the stuff that got better for me. Now, as I went along, did I start eating better? Yeah. Have I eaten perfect? No. We had those. Now my daughter-in-law made some mac and cheese last night for my grandson, so I had some mac and cheese with the chicken fingers and a big old salad. I don't often eat vegetables and I don't often eat fruits, but that's me. So this is all I did, and I just still eat the way I ate. I just am more cognizant of getting seed oils out of my system, making sure that I'm not eating as much refined sugar as possible, and making sure I'm getting in enough fiber and protein in my day. And that's really all I changed. And getting in enough fiber and protein in a day is easier than you think, and I help you through all of that. So if you want to know more about the system, I haven't looked at Atkins shakes, Maria, so I would have to look at those. Let me write that down. But if you want to know more about the system, just use the link in my profile and I'll plop it over here in Facebook land too. Guys, I think this is my last warning for the phone, so I'm going to have to um, hop off, but utilize my website, utilize the number to get a hold of me, and ask me these questions and we can have conversation. In fact, I will be on phone calls most of the day answering questions for people, whether they're my clients or not. So just give the system a try. 8:30 a.m. is when I try to come on. This morning there was a little hiccup, but yeah, 8:30 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then I take the weekend off like I recommend everyone else to too. So 8:30 in the morning, Monday to Friday. We'll see you guys tomorrow before this phone poops out on me completely. Thanks for sharing your time with me. Thanks for hanging out, Maria. It's so good to see you, and I was loved talking with you yesterday. You're on my heart always, girl. You're always on my heart. All right. We'll see you guys in the morning, and I hope you got some of your questions answered. And if you do have questions like this IgA nephropathy, ask me, and I'll see what answers I can find, because I know I don't have them all, but I know I can find most of them. All right. Have a good day, guys. You're very, very welcome.